What is up, everyone? I got another Elden Ring build video for you today. Today I'm going to be covering my viral vampire. This build attempts to poison and bleed your enemies while stealing their health for yourself. You're going to enjoy this build if you like a very basic, straightforward playstyle. There are no buffs to worry about other than your flask, and you don't need to be swapping weapons or casting a bunch of different spells. It's just you and your weapon against the enemy. Alright, let's start by talking about our stats. I started playing this a little bit later in the game. As you make your way towards level 150, you're going to want to target 50 points in Vigor, Strength, Dexterity, and Arcane. Endurance, you want 15, because that's how many you need to medium roll with the equipment you have. And then also in some situations you can wear light armor and get the light roll, which I ended up needing to do when I fought Melania, but that's not really necessary. And for our weapon, we have the Venomous Fang with the Blood Infusion. Prioritizing upgrading your Arcane is going to give you less physical damage, but it's going to increase your status buildup of both blood loss and poison. It looks like the soft cap for this weapon in Arcane is around 50 points. So once you hit 50, you'll want to focus your attribute points in other areas. Both Strength and Dexterity seem to cap around 80, so you can bring those all the way up to 80 if you wish. But as I leveled, I like to keep them all about the same, and at level 140 I wound up somewhere between 40 and 50 for all of these attributes. The only important piece for your armor set is the white mask. That's because this is going to give us 10% increased damage when there's blood loss, which we are inflicting. And then I ended up wearing Hoslow's set because I really like the way it looks and it provides decent protection. All the red adornments on the armor just give it that blood magic kind of feel. Plus it has this really cool beast crest on the cape, which kind of looked like a Dracula type thing to me. And then for our talismans, you're going to want one of the Dragon Crest Great Shield talismans to reduce your incoming physical damage. That's because we're going to be trading a lot with the enemy, which I'll show you here in a few minutes. I'm using Millicent's Prosthesis, but you could also use the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia. We are hitting quite frequently, so you're going to be able to build this up no problem. And then we have the Lord of Blood's Exaltation and the Kindred of Rot talisman. Each of these are going to give us 20% attack power when we proc Hemorrhage and Poison respectively. The damage output of your Venomous Fang looks rather low, but I was able to achieve a 750 attack rating after getting buffed from both the Poison and Blood procs. Which isn't a crazy high number, but when you consider how fast claws are, I mean they're the second fastest attacking weapon in the game, that ends up being a lot of damage out, plus the fact that you have over 100 blood buildup, and Venomous Fang can apply Deadly Poison. Deadly Poison, in my opinion, is better than regular poison because although it deals less damage overall, it deals it in a much shorter time frame, which means it's going to tick away at the enemy even harder than Scarlet Rot does. And 99.9% of the time, when you're poisoning an enemy, you're not going to wait for the poison to run out completely because they'll be dead before it runs out. For your flask, I recommend you use the Thorny Crack tier, the Green Burst Crystal tier for extra stamina regen, and then also sometimes I use the Opaline Hard tier when I need some extra damage mitigation, and you can switch between those three depending on your preference or what situation you're in. The Ash of War you're going to use, I swap between two. It's either Endure or Lifesteal Fist. Lifesteal Fist, I think, is an underrated Ash. I think one of the reasons it doesn't get a lot of love is because it's only useful against humanoid enemies. But you do end up fighting quite a few of these during your playthrough. So when you're in situations where you can use it, it's actually a really good Ash. It's good for a couple of reasons. First of all, it does pretty good damage. Second, they can't guard against it, which is really helpful against the big, strong knights that just guard and then want to poke you with their spear. Plus, it regenerates 1/3 of your total health, which is a lot. I have seen some comments that Lifesteal Fist is hard to get off, but there is a way to get around this. You can actually combo into Lifesteal Fist fairly easily. When you run up to an enemy either doing a jumping heavy attack or a running heavy attack, you should stagger your opponent just long enough to get the skill off. And because you've already attacked them, you should be within range for the skill to activate. I found that this is a really reliable way to get the skill off. And then during boss encounters, because you generally can't use Lifesteal Fist on them, or any other area where you're not fighting humanoid enemies, I like to use Endure. Endure gives you 40% damage mitigation, and it makes so that the enemy can't really break your stance. The one exception is enemies that'll flat knock you down or knock you back, but this isn't that common. With all of our damage mitigating tools running into a boss, I ended up having around 70% damage mitigation, which is huge. And when you couple this with Endure, you're just like a tank swinging away, hemorrhaging and bleeding everything in your path. So when you're fighting a boss, it goes something like this. You cast Endure, you run up to them, get a few swings off, even if you have to trade so that you proc poison and bleed on them. Now that you're fully buffed with around 750 attack rating, you flask up, hit Endure again, and then go back in for some more damage. I mean, just watch what it does to Horaloo. The main drawback to this build is its reach. But as long as you have Endure, you shouldn't have any trouble just running right up to the enemy, taking whatever hits they can dish out, and you should be able to take them out very quickly. I typically don't talk about Great Runes in my builds, but with this one it feels like Reichardt's Great Rune just fits so well, so I do end up using that. Reichardt's Great Rune has the same effect as Taker's Cameo, so every time you kill an enemy, it replenishes some of your health. This isn't useful against bosses since it's only one enemy you're fighting typically, but when you're just running around the landscape, this actually does really come in handy because you replenish a good amount of HP as you run along killing things, which you end up needing because as you cast Endure, you end up trading and taking some damage, so that's put to good use. And I will talk about consumables a little bit here. They're definitely not necessary. I didn't really use them, but two consumables I would recommend are Exalted Flesh to boost your physical damage output, and then also one of the boiled prawns. I actually really wanted to use either the boiled shrimp or crab, but I stupidly killed Blackguard Boggart early in the game, so I didn't have access to any of those. So for that reason, I recommend not killing him and buying some of his seafood because I think it would have helped me out, especially against Malenia. I feel like Malenia is kind of a worst case for this build because we're wanting to trade, but with Malenia you instinctively don't want to trade because every time she hits you, she's going to replenish some of her health. But as you'll see here in a minute, it ended up working out okay. I will admit I've avoided fighting Malenia up until now. Honestly, I've been a little bit too scared, but anyway, I made it down to the roots of that tree and I fought her. It took a couple hours to sort of learn her moveset, but I was able to kill her with this build. All right, that's it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one.
My brother. I'm sorry. I finally met my man.